Hello, it's UXW Bill here with a laptop video. One of the first that I've made in quite a while. I think one of the last laptops that I talked about was the Apple Macintosh PowerBook G3. Well, what I have tonight is a little bit different of a story, and that story begins with this, a Compaq LTE 5000. Now this is not the focus of the video, but this is as good a beginning point as any because the machine I'm going to talk about next is the successor to the venerable LTE 5000 series. Now Compaq actually started the LTE lineup back in the early 90s. I believe it was an ultra slim 386 something or another machine, and then it proceeded all the way up to this, which I believe was one of the last machines to bear the LTE name, the LTE 5000 series. And this particular LTE 5000, which I will make a video about later, is actually a machine that I bought in, the year 2000 or so at a used business machine shop that I used to frequent. I got to know the guy who ran it very, very well, and I could go down there with the old Taurus station wagon, fill that thing with computers for a $100 bill or even less sometimes, toward the end a lot less, sometimes nothing, and take that stuff home. And you know, a lot of that was my education and brought me to where I am today. And I've been into computers for a lot longer than that. But that stuff was my education and led up to my doing what I do today, such as professional IT work in a corporate environment. But this machine followed me around from the time that I bought it as scrap for about $20. I got lucky. It had been seriously upgraded. The RAM had been maxed out, and somebody put a 3.1 gigabyte hard drive in it, which I upgraded to something else. Even the battery that came with it still held something of a charge. Really, the only thing that had me stymied was the lack of a CD-ROM drive, and I did eventually come across one. And of course, at some point, the floppy drive failed. But through the luck of eBay, I actually found a floppy drive that was brand new in the Compaq packaging and had never been used. So that's still working quite well to this day. This machine served me well until March of 2005, when I retired it in favor of the Dell Latitude D800 that I opted to purchase. It would be the first new laptop that I had had since the late 90s. Prior to this, I had a Compaq Presario series laptop that was a rather large hunk of junk, and so I eventually sold it for parts. This little machine was the very definition of reliability. It never gave me any trouble until the end of its career, when the charging circuit started to go a little bit bonkers, and the good old clock and standby battery finally got weak enough to where it really didn't work at all any longer. But it got me through, and I really can't complain about its service, because it went above and beyond the Call of Duty. For $20 and scrap, and purchasing it on the basis that it was scrap, it didn't owe me a darn thing. And there, of course, it is with the cover open. Now, stock, this thing came with a 640 by 480 dual scan or passive matrix color display. Has stereo speakers up there. Honest to goodness slider adjusters. Nearly every laptop ever made does this in software nowadays. But there was definitely something to be said for those controls. There's a status LCD down there. And this particular machine, being at the bottom of the totem pole, was actually a 75 megahertz Intel Pentium processor that was driving things. Also had an Opti Viper chipset in it. Something that you won't see nowadays. Because I don't even believe that Opti is a functional designer of anything anymore. I think they folded and went out of business some time ago. But yeah, this thing served me very well. Never had too many problems with it, and I did end up hot rodding it because during this machine's lifetime, a couple of upgrades came its way. I thought about upgrading the display, but I never did it because I wasn't unhappy with this display. But I did upgrade the processor card. This thing shipped stock with a 75 megahertz Intel Pentium processor, and today it's got a 150 megahertz Intel Pentium processor card in it, from an LTE 5380 or something like that. But that's this machine. Now onto the one that's the star of the show. You see, my dad was out garage sailing on Friday afternoon or Saturday afternoon, somewhere in there when he was out carrying the mail. He was garage sailing, and he came across this. And you can tell already there's more than just a slight resemblance between these two machines. But this is much newer. This dates from the late 1990s. This is a Compaq Armada 7770DMT. 7770DMT. Kind of clumsy to say that. and I'm not getting it totally right. But this was at the back of a pile at a garage sale of stuff that was marked free, and nobody had taken it. There were several books back there and things like that, so my dad picked it up. And as you can see, it too has the floppy drive in place. Who knows where the CD-ROM drive went, but you'll see why that doesn't matter in just a minute. Has a series of LEDs here instead of the LCD status screen that's on the LTE 5000 back there. Power, battery charge, hard drive, and I'm not sure about that one. That might be for multi-bay activity. Over here, we have this slot right here. I have no idea what this is for. This is slightly smaller than a PC card slot. I haven't looked inside it to see what kind of pins might be in there. There's a Kensington security lock right there. Eject levers for the two PC card slots, which I believe are card bus capable on this machine. They were not on the old LTE 5000 because it predated that standard by quite a bit. But I believe they are card bus capable on this. You come around to the back, and you can see there's a connection for a telephone modem, 9-pin serial port, an infrared port, microphone, headphones, and line in, a parallel printer, the docking port, of which more later, a combination PS2 keyboard and mouse port, and then a video port. And what may make this machine even more unique than many of them is right here. You see this sort of Mickey Mouse looking plug with the two ear sort of connections on it, and then the bottom pin here, which is probably the ground. That's right, this machine is not dependent on a power brick, and I knew that Compaq had done this because I dimly remembered seeing the advertising in PC Magazine in the late 1990s, but I had never seen one of these in the flesh, and Toshiba was actually much better known for building the power supply into the machine. But as long as you had the suitable power cord, you would never be without power because the power brick was built in. You couldn't lose it, you couldn't leave it behind. In fact, the only tragedy that could befall it is the internal power, the power supply in here could fail. But I don't think that was a big problem, especially since they were, being inside the machine, they were certainly subjected to much less use and abuse than the external power bricks and their somewhat fragile cords. On the bottom here, I have a couple of rubber sliders, a couple of release levers, probably for the multi-bay, another rubber thing. This is probably a slot for the memory to be upgraded. And this machine supposedly supports a maximum of 144 megabytes of memory. It has 81 or 82 megabytes installed in it now. But perhaps the most amazing thing of all is what happens when I open the machine up. So let me do that and I'll be right back. And I'm back with the machine opened up. You can see there are two stereo speakers. This is an 800 by 600, I believe this is another passive matrix display, although I could be wrong about that. There's the other speaker over there. This has a 233 megahertz Intel Pentium processor with MMX technology. Look to be a couple of hotkey buttons right here, 1, 2, 3, and 4. There's the standby button over here, volume up and down, keyboard lock indicator LEDs, and a power slider. Now the tracking device is built into the keyboard and follows IBM's TrackPoint series. I actually like these things a lot. They're quite nice to have once you get used to them. They're not for everybody. Not everybody gets used to them. But if you don't like the touchpad that's on all other laptops, this might just be the way for you to go. I certainly got along plenty well with them, although they're kind of a pain if you're running a paint program on a laptop and trying to do high precision work. But I even managed to get pretty good at that. Now, there's a grill over here on the side, and I would say this is probably cooling for the built-in power supply. And this ventilation slat right here probably helps. But the most amazing thing about this machine, when I got it and I hooked it up, the built-in battery started taking a charge. And I think that the battery is good. I have run this machine for about an hour from the battery. There it is booting up, memory count. So 82 megabytes, we'll call that. And it boots into Windows 98, second edition. So go ahead and power it up here. It grunts and diddles around for a little while, and then it should go ahead and boot up. Yep, there it goes. That paddle fan is making an irritating noise. I don't know why it's doing that. Even when I've shut it down properly, it's insisted on running ScanDisk, and it's not giving me the disk with bad sectors message, so I think that probably needs a little visit from Tweak UI. I am officially calling this the laptop of doom because that's what the previous owner set the wallpaper to. The audio circuitry works. Now, I can say for sure that the clock is not set right. It's actually about, well, it's just about 30 seconds shy of 1:30 in the morning. I'm a night owl, but I got work tomorrow, and I really ought to be going to bed instead of messing around with this thing. That's just how dedicated I am to all of you, so please keep that in mind. As you can see, the display looks good. It's got decent color on it. Not much left on this machine, although somebody left a collection of racy pictures, and quite frankly, yeah, no thanks. Just deleted all those. And didn't even look back. Not into that kind of stuff. And I think that's the stupidest use for a computer ever. No offense to anybody who enjoys that kind of thing, but it's not something I'm into. System seems to be good and responsive. It's got a couple of software programs on it, you know, the stuff that comes with Windows. Looks like whoever had this thing was into playing card games. And they did their taxes on it once upon a time, but clearly they deleted that. They also deleted most all of their documents, and from the looks of the most recently used items menu in Microsoft Word, they were saving pretty much everything to a floppy diskette anyway. And of course, Word itself is functional. It's running Word 97. What a blast from the past. But you know, as far as I'm concerned, the Word 97 through 2000, well, yeah, through 2003 interface was actually the best. I don't care for the ribbons or any of that stuff in Office 2007 and later in the slightest. That stuff totally drives me up a wall. I want a simple, clean environment where I can find the commands I'm looking for and use them. And good old Microsoft Word, pretty much every version from the beginning all the way up to 2003 is more than good enough for me. And these days I'm more of an open office user anyway. But good old Microsoft Word is still useful. And let's see, I'll go into Internet Explorer here. Now, this machine doesn't have any kind of wireless hardware in it or anything like that. But it looks like it's working from its cache here, because that's definitely an older MSN homepage. It says Wednesday, April 30th, but it doesn't give us a year, although there is MSN 8. If that helps anybody date it, I don't know how old MSN 8 was, but right now this machine is running off of its battery. If we go in here to the battery meter, you can see it's holding steady at 83%. I don't know if it's a replacement battery or the original. I don't really care too much because it seems to work, which is pretty impressive. Now, a machine like this, you wouldn't really want to go online with it today. It probably doesn't have the horsepower to do the things that modern sites are going to demand, especially with all their JavaScript, which is very processor intensive, and you need a machine with CPU cycles to burn. But this thing would do very well if all you wanted to do was take it out to, you know, the outdoors or the country or a campsite and work on your great American novel or play some good old DOS games or something like that. This thing would still be cooking along pretty well for that. Let's see what kind of hardware is in here. I don't have any idea what chipset this thing is based on or anything. I don't know if that's the factory preload or not, but definitely says manufactured and supported by Compaq, so can't be too far off. Let's see what we've got here. Generic IDE disk type 65. I'll have to look that up elsewhere because Windows 98 is rarely specific about that. Let's see here. Looks like a 3 GB hard drive in it, and it's approximately halfway in use. Let's see, the display adapter is an S3 Aurora 64V+. Standard floppy disk controller, Compaq PCI IDE controller. That's kind of interesting. Didn't really expect to see that there. Infrared, keyboard, modem, voice view, 28 bits per second, kilobits per second if you abbreviate it like that, modem. And voice view implies that it could be used as an answering machine and maybe even to place telephone calls. An 800 by 600 display. Let's see. There's no Ethernet hardware built into this machine, although again, more on that later. Texas Instruments PCI 1131 card bus controller. Couple of ports, serial and printer, of course. Yeah, it has ESS audio on it, an ES1878 plug and play audio drive. Remember them? They're still around, but they They make DVD player chipsets and stuff like that now, as opposed to PC hardware. Let's see here. We have a couple of APM battery slots, a whole bunch of those. I don't think this machine actually has 4 battery slots in it. Advanced power management support. Compaq MIS-L PCI to internal ISA bridge. I wonder if this thing's core logic is really from Compaq. I know that machine was farmed out. A company by the name of Inventa Computer in Taiwan actually produced the LTE 5000. At one point, Compaq did manufacture their own laptops, which was really actually quite unique in the industry because almost nobody else did. But they had an assembly plant in Singapore that they owned and operated when almost everybody else farmed it out to some Taiwanese OEM. So maybe this machine was actually built by them. That certainly doesn't happen anymore. And other than that, you've got pretty much what you'd expect to find in here. The math coprocessor, PCI bus, system BIOS, programmable interrupt controller, system board. Of course, you kind of need one of those. Let's see what's going on over here on the performance tab. We are configured for optimal performance. But despite all of this stuff, this is not the most fun aspect of this system, nor does it tell you anything about the other part of it that I also received. So just a moment and I'll be right back with that. You better make room on your kitchen table for this. Now these things don't show up anywhere near as often as the actual laptops themselves do. And this is a docking station for said Compaq Armada laptop. This thing was, the laptop was permanently attached to this, and I'll talk about that more in a minute. But what you do with this thing, when you get back to your office or your home or wherever and you want a desktop computer, rather than buying a dedicated desktop, you could, at least in theory, plug your laptop into this thing, i.e. dock it, and this thing would connect you to power and all your home peripherals, and it would provide some other capabilities. You can see a CD-ROM drive nestling down there, a multi-bay over here, and I'm not 100% sure how they intended for this thing to be properly used, but there's a picture here that seems to imply that maybe you're supposed to fix the computer to the plate first and then actually push this plate in. This plate comes off and you can handle it separately. I guess I ought to try to download a user's manual for this thing. There's 2 holes here, and this thing's been a little bit discombobulated on this end, like maybe somebody dropped it. But these 2 holes here actually allow you to put a covering over the laptop and mount your CRT monitor on top, provided it's not so achingly heavy that it would break the thing and cause your laptop to be crushed by a falling CRT. There are a lot of things that this thing offers that are not built into the base laptop hardware. One of the most important, of course, is a set of bigger and fancier speakers, and these really do sound quite a bit deeper and more powerful than the built-in speakers on the computer. This thing weighs about as much as a compact car. I wish I was kidding, but that's only a slight exaggeration. This thing is very heavy and kind of inconvenient to move around. But as you can see here, there is a button that I will talk about more later. You can see it has an eject symbol next to it. There's the infrared port, volume control, headphone and microphone, but no line in here. Mute, power button, even though that's accessible on the laptop, it wouldn't be if you had the CRT stand on this thing. So you get an external power connector, and there's a key lock over here to actually physically secure the machine and prevent anyone from removing it, which thankfully is unlocked because I didn't get the key. What else is there on this thing? There are 2 expansion slots, and I have no idea if these are ISA slots or PCI slots or a mixture thereof. I would expect one of them is PCI and the other is ISA. Up here we have 2 more card bus slots, and I'm unclear as to whether or not those function as replacements for the ones on the machine or if they function in addition to. Because the ones on the machine, they would only be blocked off if you had the monitor stand on this thing. So my guess is that all 4 of the slots would remain functional. Then around back, there are some more ports. Here are the other ports on the back. First thing you have is a fan, and this is actually load and thermally controlled. If the machine is just sitting on here doing nothing, the fan is off unless it gets hot just from, standby heat building up in the power supply. If the machine is charging its battery, the fan runs slowly. If the machine is fully powered, the fan runs more rapidly, and probably would run more rapidly still depending on how many goodies you have installed in this unit. This adds onboard Ethernet, gives you access to your telephone modem, a game port and a MIDI plug, and a serial port. Not sure what this is. This has some kind of a radiating symbol next to it, maybe some sort of an external infrared transceiver or something. I have a line in, I have a line out, VGA, parallel port, and separate this time around keyboard and mouse ports. There's also a lock lever back here whose function I'm not totally sure of, but I think this is a slightly less permanent means of locking the system down. Now you'd be able to open this docking unit to insert expansion cards, so maybe this locks the cover on. Like I say, I really ought to download a manual for this thing. There's some sort of a padlock strap here, which is made of very sturdy steel. The power supply is not auto-ranging. It actually has one of those little red switches between 115 or 110 and 220, or however you want to say it. And then, of course, there's a Kensington security lock slot down here. So that's pretty much an overview of the ports on this thing. Like I said, this thing is heavy. This thing weighs a lot. Maybe even weighs as much as a Buick. Let's put it on the scale and find out. Wowee! 20 pounds, 13 ounces roughly. That's pretty amazing. This is the kind of laptop docking station that would give people phobias. Here's the docking station plugged in. And what I'm getting ready to show you has great entertainment value. In fact, this thing managed to do almost as well as the barcode reading wand in one of my previous videos. So think about that if you're ever facing a boring Saturday night down the barrel and looking for something to do. If you're easily amused like we are, this ought to keep you quite happy. Put the machine on here, and you make sure that you're feeding it in properly to the docking station. And then you push it in, and it's on the docking station now. And you can see it's getting power. The battery's being charged. You can go ahead, just a moment here, I'll open the lid, and you can use the machine just like this, or like I say, if you had a monitor stand over the top of it, you would leave the lid shut. And if you press the power button here on the side, it's actually a slide switch, that will go ahead and turn the entire computer on. Now, its internal speakers are muted, and the external speakers take over. The CD-ROM drive obviously works. This thing has audio playback buttons on it. Maybe I should go get a music CD and try that out and just see what the fidelity of this thing is like. Here it is booted up again. Let's go ahead and just bypass this prompt. So there's a great deal more stereo separation and depth to that sound. I've got a music CD here. Let's just go ahead and put that in. I'll get it queued up here and we'll see how the internal speakers sound. Okay, I've got the CD player queued up, ready to play a track, and I'll have to keep this really short because this is a Warner Music Group CD, and we all know that they like to shoot first and ask questions later, and cane music lovers everywhere. But that's some great PR, guys. You just keep that up. That's really working for you. So let's go ahead and turn this on and see what it sounds like.
A big black dog, little too much gray around the muzzle. A big black dog, why she ended up at the pound.
Well, there's something not quite perfectly right there because I'm only getting sound out of one speaker, and back when it played the Windows logon sound, it actually made sound out of both speakers, or gave the strong impression that it was playing sounds out of both speakers. So let me try to find something else to play. There we go. Now I've got a MIDI song queued up in the Windows Media Player. Let's just give that a little listen. That does not sound like FM synthesis to me. I don't remember seeing a wavetable synthesizer in the hardware roster. Let's just have a look here. Go into the control panel, head over to multimedia, ESS audio drive, MIDI. Aha! Microsoft GS wavetable software synthesizer. Let's change that over to the ESS FM synthesizer and just see if we can play through that now. I'll probably have to start this over again so they'll notice. Let's just go in here and play that again. So you can hear what an honest-to-goodness FM synthesizer sounds like. Quite a bit different, huh? As you can see, the battery is definitely taking a charge. There are 4 battery slots there, and I would imagine that has to do more with the docking unit than anything else, that perhaps the docking unit can somehow go ahead and charge batteries. Although whether or not it can do 4 of them, I have no idea, but clearly the computer's APM logic thinks that it can. Here's the entertaining part, in case you think I've been leading you on. As you can see, there is an additional command that has been added to the Start menu down here for Windows 98, and this shows up only on laptop computers that have a docking option. It says Eject PC. You can see it right there. Just move the highlight to it. And what that does is that doesn't do anything nearly as exciting as it sounds, but it prepares the computer to be separated from its docking station without being powered off. But in this case, where normal computers typically expect you to press a button or something to undock the machine, this docking station goes a little bit further, and this is the fun part. So I'm going to go ahead here and tell Windows that I want to eject the PC, and Windows is going to tell me that it has not successfully rerun hardware detection in the following hardware profiles since the last time you ran setup, and of course it says original configuration. That's what hardware profiles are used for. Now, I suppose that something bad could happen if I say that I want to continue without restarting, but you know what? I'm feeling like a daredevil, and I don't really care too much about this copy of Windows if something unfortunate happens to it, because I plan to reload the operating system on here anyway. So let's just go ahead and live dangerously. Let me show you what this crazy thing does. This is pretty far out. Yes, that did exactly what you saw it do. And as you can see, Windows survived the experience, and now the computer can be completely liberated from its docking station. Of course, I can put it back into place. Oh, a fatal exception. Oh, we got a blue screen out of it. Well, maybe it didn't like that so much. Oh well, reboot. You can also perform the undocking operation by pressing this button here on the side, and when you do, again, the computer gets kicked out of the docking station, which is pretty darn cool. So there you have it. That's pretty much a complete tour of this machine that my dad picked up for nothing at a garage sale. It's kind of neat, and it will certainly have its uses around here because, like I say, the battery still works well. Just needs to be cleaned up and have the operating system reloaded. It'll probably get Windows 98 and some addition or another on it again because it really doesn't have enough memory to run all but the most stripped down Linux distributions very well, and it really doesn't have enough memory to run something like Windows NT or 2000 very well because those like plenty of RAM as well, and this machine just doesn't have it. So Windows 98 is probably the best choice for this, especially since I'm not going to put any real money into it by upgrading the memory, and it probably takes proprietary modules anyway. Well, I've kept you here for nearly half an hour. I'll let you go now. Thank you for watching, and if you have a comment, by all means feel free to leave one down below.